Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. This is the lake I live on, and every day for the last 3 weeks, right at sundown and right after sunrise, the bass have been schooling right out there, and they're feeding on minnows that are about 2 to 3 inches long, schooled up as well, and they're smashing them on topwater, but they will not hit any topwater lure. So we're going to go into the shop, design and make a lure that I think they might go after. Stick around. This is a wake bait, not just a little crankbait. You don't see too many wake baits the shape of minnows, but we're making one today. Let me show you what it's going to look like. So as you can see, just a standard minnow shape, nothing really special. We'll probably have a classic scale pattern, boulder on top and sort of fading out towards the belly. Real simple paint job. It shouldn't take us very long. I should be able to get this shaped, painted, and out on the lake before sundown. So let's see if we can get it done so I can fish the sundown session. So I made this one a few days ago, but I really think it's just a little too big. So I'm going to go for something slightly smaller. Let's put down the dimensions. This one is actually 3 inches. So I'm taking a 1/2 inch off of it. And the thickness is going to be governed by our material of choice. And if you guys have been watching me, you know I'm not a big stickler on quality of wood. I just need wood that's either dense enough or buoyant enough to meet the needs of the lure itself. The rest is up to the designer and the builder. So we're going to build this one out of a dowel. So the dowel is about a 1/2 inch. Just slightly larger than that, which is about 1.4 centimeters. And as always, I like to know the density of the wood I'm using. This looks to be poplar. I'm not sure, maybe you guys know better than I do, but it looks like poplar. It's relatively hard, but not too dense. So I already cut a little segment, and here it is. And I measured the length and the diameter, and I got the volume, and then I weighed it, and I got the density. And the density is 0.49 grams per centimeters cubed. So this might seem a little meaningless right now, but it'll come in real handy figuring out how much weight I need to put in the lure body. So let's cut the dowel, and I'll show you how I shape it. So now I need to decide where I want these tapers to start, and I want it to begin about a 1/2 inch back. And the back taper, I want it to start about 1.25 inches from the tail. And that's really meaningful because of the method I'm going to use to shape this thing. I'll show you. So before we shape it, let's go ahead and mark those dimensions. So I've got a hash mark right at 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to spin this dowel and mark it, and I'll do the same on the 1.25 inch. All right, now we've got the marks. Let's start shaping. And the trick to quick shaping on this is a drill. I'm gonna put this dowel in my drill chuck, and I'm gonna leave out the side or the end that is the head, the quicker taper. And then I'm gonna take some sandpaper, and we're gonna get this thing shaped really fast. I'm gonna start with really coarse sandpaper. It goes pretty fast. You just have to have a little bit of patience. And the idea is to take it down, not to a point, but so that there's a little bit of a flat spot. Since I'm a little bit on a time crunch here, let's go ahead and supercharge this process with that belt sander. And you want to spin the dowel against the movement of the belt. That's pretty good. I'm gonna hand do the rest of it on this end, but let's get started on the back. So now I just turn it around. All right, we're getting pretty close here. I'm gonna take it down till the back has maybe 1/8 of an inch flat spot, and then we'll do the rest by hand. All right, so here's the rough shape, and there it is. It's pretty much the shape we want. It's a little rough, obviously, but with some hand sanding, we'll get it really nice and smooth. But the next step is to cut the slot. But before I actually cut that slot, I want to put in a center line just to mark where the very bottom of the lure is going to be. And that should guide me for not only the lip, but where I'm going to place the belly hook eye. The lip slot is going to be at a much steeper angle than a typical crankbait. Let me show you. Now this is a pretty good depiction of the angle I want on this, but typically what you would see on a crankbait is something much steeper, probably closer to a 45. So usually this angle is somewhere between 50 and 70 degrees. I want it somewhere around 65 or maybe 60 degrees. All right, I'm going to use my little gauge here and my angle finder, and I'm going to set this at about 65 degrees. So I'm going to establish where I want my bib to be. Now I'm going to align it by aligning this edge and making sure that this thing is perfectly aligned with the edge of my jaws, and that should give me a pretty close. So this needs to rotate just a little bit, and that'll do it right there. And that should do it. So there it is. It's cut right about halfway through. I'm going to leave this slot real thin like this. I'm going to use that same kind of circuit board lip that I used on the last lure.
The shaping method I use leaves the surface pretty rough, so I'm going to refine the shape and the finish with some of these sanding sponges.
It's kind of a key element on a wake bait to have that hook eye really close to the root of your lip. So I'm going to run a line right here, and hopefully I can create a nice flat spot that looks kind of nice. All right, so here's that flat spot I put in it. You can see all I did was put it on the belt sander, and that's why it's kind of burned, but it gives me a nice flat spot to drill in for my toe eye. So now I'm going to use some polyacrylic just sort of as a sanding sealer, and then I'm going to paint this black on top, white on the bottom, clear coat it, and then we'll come back for an actual paint job. You know what? Before I actually put the polyacrylic on it, I'm going to weigh it. I need to know what the volume of this lure is, so I know how much weight to add to it, if any. My goal is to have a lure that is pretty buoyant. I want it to come to the surface pretty quickly, so let's weigh it. 3.07 grams. So now I can just use the density I got, 0.49, and figure out the volume. And at that point, I know exactly how much this needs to weigh to be sure that it doesn't sink. So I'll do the calculations and I'll get back to you. All right, so here we are with the calculations. I went ahead and just using the weight of the body, dividing it by the density, I got 6.26. That would be it's the volume, but it also correlates to the exact weight it needs to be to continue to be floaty or to be buoyant. So I want to make sure that the final weight of the body, all the hooks, all the hardware, and the bib does not exceed 6.26. So I'm going to shoot for somewhere around 6 or a little less.
Time to get that first coat of polyacrylic on there. Just one light coat will do it. After some drying time, we'll get the white and the black paint on there. And now another coat of polyacrylic, just as a mid coat, and we'll let it dry.
All right, while that lure dries a little bit, let me talk to you about how I shaped the bib. I didn't have a bib that was exactly the right size. In fact, nowhere near. This one from the factory is 1 7/16 by 3/4 wide, and that's 2 centimeters by 3.5 centimeters. And I had to get it down to this size. Here's the size I'm going to use. So I shaved it down to that size, which is 11/16 by 11/16, which is 1.7 centimeters. And I just did my best to keep the symmetry. And the nice thing about this stuff is that you can shape it real easy with just a very light sandpaper. All right, so all I gotta do is get this thing to dry. I'll hit it with this thing for about a couple of minutes. I'll go get something to drink. That'll give it another 5 minutes. And then I'm gonna put a UV clear coat on it. And that'll give me about a 30-minute period to have lunch. And then I'll come back and we'll get started on the paint job. All right, let's put the clear coat on. All right, so this first coat of clear coat is really just to give me a relatively smooth and glassy surface to paint on. All right, now I want to make some screw eyes. So I'm just going to use this stainless steel leader wire. It's 0.028 inches, is 0.77 millimeters. So there we go. I just need to cut them the length. So I've cut all three 1 inches long, and that completes the hardware that I'm going to use. I've got these number 10 hooks and some split rings and that bib, so it's time to weigh all this stuff. All right, I've got total weight of the hardware is 2.39. So hardware weight is 2.39 grams. My body weight was 307.
You add those together and you get 5.46 grams, which is well below the 6.26 that we had to keep it under. But I've got a little extra to play with, so I'll probably add a small BB at the bottom of the body, and that'll keep us right around 5.8.
Well, our fishing plans might be shot. It's definitely raining, so hopefully this will settle down before sundown. We've got a few hours. Let's see. Back to the shop.
The first clear coat is set. Now we just need to rough it up a little bit with some sandpaper, just a really light grit. Now I'll drill in the screw eye holes. First the nose, then the belly. The tail is already done. Now I'm drilling in a hole for a BB right there behind the bib. It's perfect.
All right, that sound you hear in the background is the pouring rain. Let's double check my weight calculations. Throw the hardware, the bib, 5.81. That's about what we were expecting to see. Okay, here it is. Sand it down, smoothed off a little bit. I've got the eyes, the screw-in eyes all attached. I've got my little BB in there and smoothed off. Let's do an old school minnow pattern, and essentially that's going to be some very small scale pattern with silver. So let's get after it.
So first I'm going to clip on this really fine mesh pattern, and we're going to paint the scales with Createx Wicked Aluminum, and I'll give this 2 light coats, and I'll dry it a little bit with a blow dryer in between coat. Here's coat number 2. You got to go kind of light, because this really fine pattern, when you pull it off, if it's got a lot of paint on it, it'll tear a little bit. Now we're going to pull this off, and it's the moment of truth. Looking pretty good. Not too bad. A little bit of tear, but it'll blend in pretty nicely. Now we got to do a little painting on the belly, some opaque white. We'll start off with opaque white to get good cover, but then we'll quickly change to some pearlescent white. That'll give us a nice glimmer that blends with the scale pattern. Now we're going to switch to this semi-transparent black for the top and a little bit of highlight around the eyes as well. This will give it a nice look. Makes the eyes look a little bigger.
All right, let's give it another clear coat. Check out that sunshine. We're gonna get the fish. All right, let's get some details on this thing. I wanna put a little red here. Then we'll put some eyes on, glue on the bib, put a last coat on it, and shoot, maybe 45 minutes we'll be fishing. I'm gonna use pearlescent red. All right, I need to find some eyes to put on this thing, and I don't want to put the little tiny ones on there. And I've got two left of these. These are a little holographic, but I'm going to make them a little different. So let's give this lure a little bit of attitude. There you go. A little bit of squinty eye look. All right, that's going to look good once I get a little bit of clear coat on it. And now it's time to put the lip on. So eyeball the proper location. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give this a couple of drops of this UV Cure resin to use as glue. All right, there it is. All right, so now I'm going to wipe it down again and then give it another spritzing of some polyacrylic as a mid coat and give it one last good coat of clear, and we're ready to go fishing. All right, here it is. I haven't tested it or anything. I'm going to go ahead and put some hooks on it. So it's the next day, and here he is. It's looking pretty nice, and it leaves a nice little wake, a little trail of waves just behind it. Let's hope that the feeding pattern is still on after all this rain. It rained all day yesterday, most of today, all last night. The lake has come up about almost a full foot. So I'm a little afraid that the minnows have tucked back into the shore grass. Well, it's not quite magic hour, but I'm gonna work these edges just in case there's somebody hiding out near the grass. Oh, something grabbed on, something little. Haha, little bass from along the edge. Oh. There you go. 10 minutes in, got our first little bass. Not exactly a trophy, but let's see if we can upsize. They might be showing up after all. The sun is still pretty high. Maybe this is just the beginning of the action. They showed up. They're little ones. Is it bass or is it perch? Oh, it's a little bass. All right, they're out here. These little schoolies are pretty much all like this. So, we'll see you, bro. Well, that's really what I love about making my own lures. I can come out here or anywhere and sort of identify a feeding pattern and then make a lure specifically for that pattern. It's really a lot of fun and kind of triples the satisfaction of coming out here to fishing. If you're enjoying these videos,
Give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm that's kicking my behind. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And if you want to see me make a specific kind of lure, let me know. I'll see you on the next video.